Hello everyone, Tim Mask here for TMTV at the MWB Creative Cafe Studios, coming to you today in another of our series of TM Talks. Today I'd like to discuss something that's I've written about on in my blog articles somewhat and have definitely been talking to a lot of people about. It concerns education, economic development, and kind of our philosophical approach to the way that we're fostering creativity in today's society. And this really has an implication nationally, but very specifically for Mississippi, and may be able to put forth a path that we can not just catch up with the rest of the nation, but be a real leader in the 21st century knowledge economy. A lot of you have probably read some things I've written or heard some folks here at Marist Weston Baker and others talk about the idea of the Renaissance man, Renaissance person versus the specialist, and how this filters down through our education system. One thing that has that's happened is that our education system, as many people that are way smarter about this kind of thing than I am have said, is that our education system was really designed to be an actual workforce development tool, more so than purely for an educational standpoint, which was fine and it worked great under a 20th century industrial model. What we're now facing is a total paradigm shift in our economies across the nation, as into what is really valuable, what skills are out there that bring value to the workplace and translate into real highly paid jobs. And those, as we all know, are not necessarily in the service industry, not necessarily in the manufacturing industry at the top level, but really are in that knowledge worker base, the computer coders, the creative people, what we would consider to be within the knowledge-based economy. The issue with this is that our education system has encouraged specialization. If you think about it, under the 20th century model, the more specialized you were, the more valuable you were. You went into a particular area and even a particular specialization within that area. Those were the highly compensated people. They focused on one thing or a very small group of things and were very good at what they did at those things and were highly compensated for it. The issue with that is that in the 1940s, when our manufacturing industry was booming, we, looking at the future, had a good idea that 20-25 years down the road, manufacturing might be more involved, might be more exact, might be more precise, might be more sophisticated, but it was still going to be basically manufacturing. And we structured our education, our technical training systems to reflect that, and it worked well. What we have now is a workforce, as I said, that's based on digital tools, that's based on knowledge type workers, knowledge economy. And when we're trying to prepare kids, students, future workers for jobs, we don't know what those jobs are going to be. We don't even know what industries will have been created in the next 15, 10, 20, 25 years. So how in the world are we supposed to structure our workforce training and our education system around this? Well, the answer is, quite frankly, you can't. And this may be a case, one of those cases where everything old is new again. We had this 20th century model of education that focused on the specialist, the specialization, the job training, the workforce development skills. If we go back and we looked at education as it was more classically viewed, say in the 18th and 19th centuries, you had the encouragement of a more not so specialized, but what we might call a Renaissance-oriented education, where you had a well-rounded idea about lots of different things in the areas of science, mathematics, also in letters, also in physical activities, just a much more broader approach. Now, as I say this, I've just read a Fast Company article whose title is "Why Top Tech CEOs Want Employees with Liberal Arts Degrees." Now, I'm a huge proponent of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and I think that those things are important, but I think that's one part of an education. When we look at the reason that some tech giants are gravitating toward people with liberal arts degrees, it's precisely because they don't have an area of specialization that other educational skills have suffered because of. More liberal arts education focuses more so on critical thinking. And if you think about it, when we don't know what the jobs will be 20 years from now, and we don't know what the industries will be 20 years from now, there's no way from a technical standpoint we can really educate and specialize people in those skills today. But what we can do and we should do is push the idea of critical thinking. And critical thinking is key to many of the disciplines that are involved in a liberal arts style education. I'll give you a great example that I use all the time. You look at the companies that have really got this thing figured out. You look at those that are thriving, those places where are always tops the list of where people want to work, always tops the earnings charts, whose values are sky high in the stock market. You look at your Apples, you look at your Googles, you look at your Facebooks. What are these companies? Is Apple a computer company? I'm not so sure. Apple does as much work in entertainment as they do in hardware. If you look at Google, Google is essentially, it's a search engine, right? Well, Google's essentially an advertising company. It makes its money through ad revenues. Yet Google also has a division that's planning on mining asteroids. Now, you don't really get much more diverse than a search engine advertising company that also has a division that's working on building spacecraft to go mine asteroids. So we talk about workforce development, we talk about workforce investment. I think that we need to look at beyond just the technical aspects of workforce investment. I think we need to look at knowledge worker workforce investment. Being able to invest in developing and fostering from a very early age when we start our education system on those critical thinking skills that are going to be valuable in an age where specialization is not as much. So I guess that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say here. As we look toward the future and as we look toward building a knowledge-based economy, if we're serious, if we're really serious about doing that, we need to look way back beyond just job training and look back at the whole philosophical approach to our education system. I'm looking at this report here, mammoth, gigantic report there from the Pew Research Center, titled AI, Artificial Intelligence, Robotics and the Future of Jobs. This report that I don't necessarily argue with, basically says that by the year 2025, a lot of the jobs that are being done by workers, by skilled workers today, will be replaced by some form of artificial intelligence or robotics. Now understand, this isn't talking about factory lines where you got repetitive tasks being replaced by robots. That's already happened. This is talking about more professional skills. Everything from medical technicians to paralegals, advertising agencies, media buying, who knows? And experts are actually split about 50-50 according to this Pew report on whether or not this will have a net increase in job creation or will have a net decrease in job creation. Either way, I think the ship's already sailed on this one. This is going to happen. This is the way that we're moving. So we as a nation as a whole and Mississippi as a state in specific can decide, do we let that future come to us or do we go out and grab it by the horns? Do we go out and take control? Do we go out and be a leader and not worry about trying to follow up and catch up, but actually be out there in front, be on the leading edge of this thing? What do we need to do? Well, let's invest in our young people, first of all, in not only with the mindset of having them being users of technology, but having them be actual creators of the technology. That's a big paradigm shift, changing someone from a user into a creator. There is this misconception that young people are born tech savvy, that because they've grown up with cell phones in their hands and seeing spaceships in the sky and digital television, that they know all this stuff. Well, it is true. They are pretty savvy when it comes to using it. They are savvy technology users. But there's no reason just because a kid is born in a digital age that he knows how to create that digital content any more than we can assume that because somebody is born into an age where most people are literate, that they're born knowing how to read and write. They have to be taught, they have to be educated, and they have to be shown the value that comes from that. I think my point is that if we are really going to make an investment in moving into a knowledge-based economy, and we are serious about Mississippi being a leading outpost, a market leader, if you will, in providing the capital that will drive that knowledge-based economy, and that capital is human capital. It is the creators of all of this AI, of these robotics, of this digital content, that we need to take a hard look at our preference for specialization versus where I believe we need to go, which is looking at a more rounded, more Renaissance style education system.
Specialization.